simplifying operational processes to increase efficiency and effectiveness. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Stuart Conway, Head of Central Marketing, Digital Content and Sales Enablement for EMEA and APAC, BMO Global Asset Management, and Emily Kola, Senior Marketing Associate at BMO Global Asset Management, and Glenn Coward, President and CEO of Capability Source. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you find the success story that you're going to hear about today informative, inspiring, and helpful. I hope it helps you with your own marketing teams. It's my pleasure to introduce two distinguished members of the BMO GAM, BMO Global Asset Management marketing team today. Stuart Conway, Head of Central Marketing, Digital Content, and Sales Enablement. Stuart was the executive sponsor on the project that you're going to hear about today. And then also Emily Kola, Senior Marketing Associate. Emily was the product owner and change leader on the project that you're going to hear about today. Both of them are highly skilled professionals with specializations in collaborative work management, data-driven marketing, digital transformation, and marketing operations. I am Glenn Coward, President and CEO of Capability Source. Capability Source had the privilege of helping BMO GAM and other BMO divisions digitally transform marketing operations. Capability Source is in the business of helping marketers make a difference. That's a difference to their teams, their organization, and a difference in the world around them. We do this by improving capabilities for the business of marketing and the game of marketing. We have helped marketers improve marketing operations capabilities in hundreds of projects over the past 10 years. The BMO GAM story stands out for a couple of reasons. One is because of the huge benefits that BMO achieved. It's because of the bumps in the road. It was not easy, as you'll hear about today. There were some obstacles that had to be overcome. And then also because it started with a technology change, but it ended with a people change. Stuart, can you share the BMO GAM story with us?
Of course. Thanks, Glenn, and welcome everyone today. Pleasure to be here with you. What I'd say to start with is that we're what you call an asset manager. Effectively, what we are is we look after people's investments, people's valuable, hard-earned money. And I guess what I really like is we're kind of helping people achieve their dreams or goals. How do we take that money, invest it, whether it's for financial institutions, for people's pensions, whether it's through intermediaries, advisors who are actually looking after money and advising and putting that money away for people, or direct investors with their personal money straight to us. So that's what we do. But what I wanted to do as we go through is talk about the similarities that we have, because I think as we progress, hopefully, as you said, Glenn, some of the bumps in the road or some of the learnings can help make this less complicated for some of you guys. So we've all, hopefully, as businesses, got quite a lot in common. Our clients are people, whether they are any of those institutions or direct investors. At the end of the day, we're building relationships with people. We've got to also build trust to actually give us hard-earned money of people and actually promise to give them something more than they originally gave us. That takes a lot of trust. So we need to build trust with our clients. We also are in a world where everyone has pressure on their margins. So as a result of that, we really want to make sure we are as efficient and effective as we can be. And we also want to make sure that we've got controls around our activity as far as how we're actually progressing. Are we staying on that strategy? Are we optimizing, again, all those resources? So that's BMO. Glenn, if we can go to the next slide. But the story, as you said, is it's been a great success. The kind of improvements in productivity across the board have been fantastic and really marked. People have started to see us in marketing talking with a new language, a language that talks around the commercial side, the efficiency of what we're doing. But as we go through, as you said, Glenn, is like a lot of people think about the relationship with the technology. Yes, it is. You know, how are we going to wrap around that technology? But ultimately, it's about the people and how the people adopt that. And again, and when we're working together, this system just overlays that working relationship, but optimizes that relationship. It's like an exoskeleton, an Iron Man exoskeleton that fits around us. So, you know, we've got to make sure this suit that we adopt works for us. And we're going to kind of go through that and show how it can actually be simplified. So the challenge was that what we've been aiming to do right at the start here was, how do we actually turn central marketing and marketing around us into pretty much like an agency model. And when I say agency, I mean like a marketing agency. Effectively, how we're going to do that, and the benefits of us moving towards an agency model, is that a good agency will demonstrate value to its clients. We work for sales teams, work with sales team, investment teams. We need to demonstrate we're adding real value to the organization and to them. And in addition to that, you've got to make money as a successful agency. Now, we don't directly make money, but what I mean by that is make sure that we're disciplined and actually ensure that all of our resources are optimized so we can be profitable, but effectively we can do more with what we have. So key things we needed to make sure we were doing was that we wanted to make sure we were really collaborating. How can we foster that collaboration through the technology? How can we ensure through that technology we could be, okay, we've got agile execution. You know, we do work in an agile way. We have agile projects that some people know from software development, but this was really about how can we move resources around continuously to optimize them. Where is there a blockage coming? Where can we move those skill sets around? So we wanted to be able to have that more fluid approach to our team. Getting the data everywhere. We've got everything, the visibility of everything, and the digitized data. How can we actually see everything, the steps in it, in a data format that we can extract and optimize and actually interrogate and look at it? And it's that one source of the truth. Those who are sports people, if you know Strava, there's a statement that kind of said, if it wasn't on Strava, it didn't happen. You know, you didn't do your cycling best. It's the same here. If it wasn't on Workfront and you didn't see it happening, then it didn't happen. We need that one source of the truth to show everything that's going on. On to the next slide. So the solution, end to end, pretty much as you can see here, some lovely diagrams you've added there, Glenn. I love them. You know, we have effectively had 40 plus active users, the likes of Emily, who I'll introduce in a second. They're a lot of our marketing team and our SME, our marketing team who are using it. Obviously, it was a workflow from cradle to grave, from request going in, right the way through all the different people who interact with it, all the way to the end in our business where we need people sign off compliance or the business or various other experts. That meant we had to bring in over 600 SMEs. All of these SMEs are people in the business we had to onboard, from fund managers, investment analysts, so actually they could be part of that process and sign off on the information and the work that was done. The approval, the tracking, massive amount, up to 500 projects going through, everything starts to go through the system, so we've got total transparency. And then the beauty, the management information that we started to extract at the end, and how it allowed us as a management team to actually improve our efficiencies across the whole marketing organization. So starting to get onto the learnings, sounds all great, hopefully, and we're all progressing, but it was hard to start with. And so what we've got here is that the problem is, where we started was, it was an unknown system. We set it up, we knew exactly what we wanted to do from a senior team and as a sponsor, but a lot of people hadn't used the workflow tool before. That then creates a lot of issues. Because if you can't go down the usual route of requirements gathering. How do you ask people? I think it was Henry Ford's famous story of, he said about, you know, if I kind of went out to everyone and talked to them about designing a car, I actually would have built a horse. And it's the same thing. We had people putting things in and you kind of go, this sounds very much like the system you're currently using. So we had to step back from that. There was too many unknowns for them. It started to create a bit of chaos around how we were progressing. Then you've got, obviously, there's quite a lot of change to adopt. And now people can be, I'm really up for change, I want to change, and oh, it's a bit hard, oh, maybe, oh, it doesn't feel right, and then covert or over resistant comes in. You know, constantly can see it's being blocked, or, as again, people kind of coming up with reasons it's not quite working. So it gets very, very different, very difficult. And in addition to that, we had the opportunity to put this tool in as a result of a change in the compliance regulations and the fact that we wanted to embed the understanding of risk and compliance throughout the team and far more widely into the business. As a result of that, time pressure, all of those things together, makes it really, really hard. Thank God we had capability source. And I mean that, Claire. Okay, on to the next slide. And this is where I'm going to start to hand over to Emily soon, because if we go through, is the first thing I'd say is, if you're going to do this, you know, that motivation to begin with is the spark, but you've got to have that determination. You've got to have the trust of the team and the commitment to keep pushing through this, even when people are finding it hard. You've got to inspire, you've got to keep driving. You need to be that champion yourself to begin with. You need to get that senior management buy-in, because you will get people who will say at some points, oh, I don't know if this is going to work for us. It will, but they need to push through, and you need a good sponsor who as well will kind of cover you and kind of say, yeah, look, this is where we are headed. You need a partner. I mentioned it with empathy and patience, and this is where capability source came in for us. You know, it's not about literally taking us down a road that we're kind of stuck on and this is the way you've got to do it. We're each going to have problems along the route. We're each going to have difficult bits, and that empathy and patience with us was key. The other key bit for me, and I think this is where I'm going to hand over to Emily, was really finding that person who leaned forward. That person who got it, that other champion that could also be a boundary spanner. That person, hey, you know, I work in one department, I don't work in channel marketing, and I can tell them this is great for you, but they'll go, hey, you're not one of us, you don't look like us, you're not quite the same, you don't get our challenges, but your boundary spanner does. So this is where we found someone like Emily who took on the challenge, and I'm going to hand over to you, Emily, because the rest of it you started to lead.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. So to continue on from Stuart's points already mentioned, one key step in the process of implementing any new workflow tool, or any new tool in fact, is to establish a path of small successes. This is crucial for getting people engaged and on board with the new system, as too much change can create that resistance. So we found small steps are really crucial to testing the system and the processes work for you and your team. It allows incremental changes to optimise and tailor the system for your business, leading to achieving those successes. So the next point is looking at creating an environment and culture of co-creation. Collaboration is vital in any project, and this is something that we prioritise from the offset. We created an environment that was collaborative and allowed any team member to give feedback and suggestions on the new tool. To help support this, we created a group of super users, or champions as we call them, who fielded any questions, feedback or observations on Workfront and the process that we'd implemented to ensure that it worked in the best possible way for them. This leads very nicely onto the sixth point, which is around creating an open and transparent dialogue. So giving our team the power and courage to give an honest and transparent opinion or feedback on the workflow tool and the processes has really helped us. We act upon that feedback and look at ways that we can implement it, as that way it gives flexibility to the team and also shows that they're engaged with it too. Looking at 7 and 8, those 2 points there, they're very similar in that guided discovery takes place whereby we listen to our expert partner, Capability Source, where they had the experience and expertise working with other clients, so we could learn a lot from them. In addition, we worked very closely with our champions to get to an informed and very collaborative solution if any issues arose. This process of guided discovery also ties in with that slow and steady progress. Imagine you just bought a brand new pair of shoes. At first, they may feel a little bit uncomfortable, but over time you wear them in and you make steady and sometimes slow progress, depending on the type of shoes, to get to a point where they feel comfortable. This is the same process we went through as a business when implementing Workfront. We took our time to get a feel for the tool. We didn't rush changes too quickly. We spent time testing and learning the system. This has led us to a point where we can optimise and make changes in a more thoughtful and considered way. The final tip is embrace the data-driven knowledge and communication. As well as being a fantastic workflow tool, over time we've been able to use this tool for its full potential in seeing those data-driven insights. This moves us on to the next slide. So this encapsulates exactly that. One of our biggest drivers as a business was to realise and visualise efficiency, effectiveness and engagement metrics. So as you can see from the slide, we've given you an example and a bit of a flavour of what Workfront has been able to show us as a team in terms of our output. That 100% increase that you can see in productivity isn't just down to an increase in volume of work, but what it actually shows us is we know we now have visibility of all work and the individual tasks and stages that take place across the whole of our team. Prior to implementing Workfront, we didn't have that. We use a variety of different systems, from Outlook to having a chat with someone. Those approaches and ways of tracking projects were totally inefficient. So since implementing Workfront as our workflow tool and the central processes for our projects, we as a team have increased our productivity by 100%. We go on to the next slide. So before I hand back to Stuart, this next slide is a prime example of how we have realised and achieved efficiencies through implementing Workfront. This data is derived from Workfront through the timesheet tool, which is filled in by all of our marketing team, and we then report on a monthly basis to ensure we have the correct focus, resource and capacity to support the business needs and requirements to senior management. This example graph is a demonstration of time spent across general categories. So this includes things like planning, budget management, holidays, etc. So you can see on here, the team in this example all perform the same function. As you can see, Team Orange has the highest number of projects compared to the other teams in the blue. By filling in the timesheet, this creates a visual and really clear dialogue to share with management to help and support this team to see where efficiencies can be gained, whether that's reprioritising projects, giving additional resource, etc. The data that we have managed to capture through Workfront as our workflow tool allows our senior management team to align our strategy and execution, and also ensure that we have the right people doing the right job at the right time. So I'll hand back to Stuart.
Thanks, Emily. Last one, just going to talk through, and again, you can't really see the detail on here. Don't worry, you're not supposed to. We've got some next generation dashboards. Some of it is blanked out. But the reason I want to show this is that we've started now interlinking the data we can get from Workfront, what Emily's been starting to extract from that time, to actually build some very complex return on investment models. This one's around events, where what we're doing is we're starting to look at those people who've attended to our events, their kind of level of influence, the potential assets that we could gather, or sales from those organizations that we're working with based on the historical data that we have from those organizations and those sales. But then what we can start to look at is how, from that side, what was the cost of that? What was the genuine cost of putting that event on? And as a result, start to look at real ROI models. So now we can put in the media cost as far as that goes, which is fine. But often on big events or large campaigns, as Emily and the team know, is there's a lot of work that goes into these. And that kind of generally the media cost is the tip of the iceberg. The actual hours and time spent by the team is the bit underneath, and that has to be quantified. So now we're integrating different platforms, different dashboards, but Workfront is really now that solid base underneath to feed into these systems.
All right, so I'll chime back in here on lessons learned, both from the executive sponsor side, services side, and then also from the project team itself. So I think we learned once again the importance of management information and controls. I guess I'll call it governance, and how important that is to be able to align strategy with execution. From our external services perspective, you know, what we really see here is a clear story where there's a hardworking team, and there is a executive strategy, or there is a marketing strategy that needs to be aligned with what people are actually doing on the floor. And before we started, that alignment was difficult. At the end of it, based upon what you just saw in the last couple of slides, graphics and dashboards, I think BMO GAM was able to make that alignment, and it made a big difference in their productivity. I was also reminded of in this project of the fact that it's about people and relationships. You know, just because what you see on the left side here in this slide, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Modern technologies lend themselves to over-engineering. They have a lot of features and a lot of capabilities. In this case, Workfront was the collaborative work management technology used to enable this change, this digital transformation, and it is a very powerful tool. It needs to be used wisely and not implementing features that the team's not ready for, implementing at a certain pace. And that's where we have the finding on the right side, the learning. Don't overwhelm the team. Technology is capable of being implemented, especially modern cloud-based technology, a lot faster than people can adopt it. And so it's important not to throw too much at a team and to make sure that they're prepared to accept new functionality. All right.
And Glenn, thank you for that. I'm just going to finish off from our side, but add to what you said. That's so important because of what Capability Source and your team did for us was, Emily alluded to, was really act as that guide. And that guide is leading, but also sometimes holding you back, not in a negative way, in an absolute positive way. And it's that change of pace as a guide, having the empathy, but knowledge of what's coming, that's so important for us, because of at the start, you're unsure, you're not knowing what you can do. Some people get overexcited, me, other people kind of a bit more cautious. You've got to work with the different people. But as you start to progress and we start to put it in, again, two things can happen. As you said, this tool, as we know, and I'll show you some of the future stuff we're doing, is so powerful. It can do so much. But where we are now and some of the things we're looking at is only as a result of a couple of years of doing this and working with a trusted partner like Capability Source. We couldn't have been doing this before. And Emily, I know you'll probably agree with us if we started to sit down with the team and go, hey, we're in now a position where we could open this firm wide. We could actually start to look at ROI across investments and timesheets. Initially, people going, I'm not filling in timesheets. I'm not doing it. How do I? So, Glenn, absolutely. And as a result of you guys acting as that really good, solid guide in that pace, the big things we are looking at moving beyond now is there's a real opportunity. Those relationships aren't just in marketing. We've already said there's 600 SMEs in all these different departments. Work is moving through the whole company, through all different departments. And that's a real opportunity. How can we expand that far more widely? The second one is that resource plan and allocation. Starting to really, really nail down what's coming in the future. Where are those pinch points? Really, really locking that down so we can optimize every little piece out of that team, because of those margins are incredibly important. But it also shows when the business wants us to accelerate, we can see whether we can, and in advance, start to organize more resource to deliver that. And then finally, we talked about the fully loaded ROI is where we're really starting to map. Again, imagine that across all the teams. It's not just marketing costs, it's across other teams. Suddenly you start to build a really, really powerful digital transformation of an organization. Back to you, Glenn.
All right, so where do you start your journey? So like BMO GAM, when they began this project, there was a goal, but there wasn't a clear path to determine how to achieve that goal. We as Capability Source were able to help in a lot of ways to setting up that program plan and understanding how to eat that elephant one bite at a time. But we have some tools that are free and they're online, they're available on our site to help you begin this sort of a journey. There are actually two benchmarking tools. One is a planning agility tool, and one is a marketing work management or collaborative work management benchmarking tool. Both of these benchmarking tools not only help you to determine where you are today, but they provide some suggestions on how you should proceed based on where you are today. So for example, should you start investing in some people-based capabilities, or should you start with technology first? Maybe you have an information need and you need to start there. Maybe your processes are broken and you need to start out by fixing some of your broken processes. These tools will help you to determine where you are and how to make your next steps forward. Once again, these are free. I encourage you to go and take these assessments, and it'll help you to get started. All right, so thank you very much for joining us today. I want to say special thanks to Stuart and Emily. They have a wonderful story. Like I said earlier, it stands out both because of the success and because of the approach that they took. It wasn't a technology first approach, it was a people first approach that focused on relationships. We have found that to be always the best approach to take for these sorts of digital transformations. If you'd like to know more about their story, we do have a case study that you can download from our digital booth for DMFS, or you can contact us directly at solutions@capabilitysource.com, and we'll be happy to share with you some more insights about this story and other companies and other situations where similar stories have been accomplished and similar benefits. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful presentation. We do have a little bit of time for Q&A. Before I jump into that, I do want to say to all the attendees, go visit Capability Source's booth. Glenn and the team will be there. I believe you mentioned it in the presentation, but there's a BMO case study available to access there. You can set up a meeting and talk with the team there. So yeah, we have a little bit of time for Q&A. We have one question that came in here. How did you manage people who are resistors to change throughout the project? And as you went through that, is there anything else you would have done differently in general?
Shall I jump in there first, guys? Yeah, great question. I think we do the first one, which is, I guess, resistance. And I'd say carrot and stick. We use both. From the stick side, key thing is that we actually did say, this is the platform. This is it now. This is the one we use. I think I mentioned it in the presentation, but that's where everyone goes. If it's not on there, it didn't occur. So it really focused everyone on having to make that change. But that was only last so much. So the other piece was extracting that data to actually support people, so people could actually start to see the benefits of some of that data. How we could look at where there was optimizations to make their jobs easier, etc. So the data really helped. And the final thing for Emily, I'm sure she's got ones to add, I would say, is finding those special people, setting those champions, finding those champions like Emily, where we could exemplify them and actually, make them different, and the individual, the rest of the marketing team suddenly see, well, look, there's a difference. There are these champions, and these guys are doing something very, very special. Emily, I know you had lots of bits as well.
Yeah, I'd add to that just to say, in terms of the resistance to change, I think it's really important to be able to speak the same language across the team with different team members when you're launching a new workflow tool, kind of any tool really. I think it's good to speak the same language and kind of speak with empathy, be understanding, kind of take people on that journey and make sure that they fully understand why we're doing things, and it's kind of positioned in a really positive way. That's something that I think really helped us at BMO in terms of getting Workfront implemented, and without the help of Capability Source it would have been a much more difficult job, so we were really lucky in having them as a partner in terms of launching this for us.
I think, and then the other bit was what would we have done differently as well. I think there's a number of things. I think one was right from the start is actually getting a smaller group of people who did get it and wanted to get it. I mentioned about that when we're asking for requirements and stuff, just too wide and people just getting confused, etc. So I think the first thing we need to have that actual smaller group and actually bring them in right from the start, and those kind of creating those exemplifiers. And the second bit really is the tool's taken off so well, and we've seen we've done a lot of change, is that we really do need now an admin, a workflow traffic type manager to really run this. The champions with Emily, we're kind of doing it. With Capability Source have filled that gap and have been effectively our admin, and we're kind of not taking away. That's been amazing, but we need also as well, they're the experts on the change. We need someone who's actually optimizing it for our organization and now utilizing it to actually really finesse it for us and work with the admin. So that's certainly two of mine.
I'd also add that training is something that I think we could have extended further than we did. So we did a lot of training for the team in terms of the basic understanding of the tool itself. But I think what would be really beneficial and something that we're doing at the moment is getting more people on board in terms of that advanced training. So knowing more about the tool, kind of testing things, pushing things outside the box, and seeing kind of what works for them. So I think getting more super users on the platform would have been really beneficial in terms of kind of making it easier for us. But we were lucky again to have Capability Source to help us with that training material and kind of giving us that prompt and giving us advice as to how we can do things. So a lot of that is learning from them and their skills. So that's another point that I'd add to what we do differently.
Yeah, you have to sit with one of Glenn's team for a few minutes and they're kind of flying around the system. You go, oh, hang on, that looks amazing. How do you do that? And you're like, you realise that there's so much that you don't know, and you're really just driving that Ferrari slowly. There's so yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart and Emily. You know, hey, I want to say that, you know, from the implementation perspective from our team, you know, there was a transition that happened. It started out, as I mentioned in the session, with a technology focus, and it became more of a change, you know, a transformation for the team. It became a people focus. And I think that when Stuart and Emily took over and actually, you know, became owners of the project and really made it about the relationships and the people, you know, there was a transition point. And I think that allowed for more focus on change management and the things that really matter, so that we could get adoption. And so that's, you know, I think that was an observation. If we were to do something different, I would rather them to have been completely in control from the very beginning, have the marketing team in control of this project and not the IT team. I think that that would have benefited even more. The results are significant, but, you know, I think that that would have been even more positive.
Wonderful, wonderful. I did just see there's a couple more questions. Actually, we have a few minutes. Simple question, sometimes simple. Everyone wants to know about time frames. So what was the time frame for implementation for the new workflow process?
Too little.
Not enough.
Not enough. Emily, I'm just going to go, it was something quite ridiculous, like 60 days or something like that. You know, it was really short. You know, we had an opportunity to take some budget from IT, actually set this up, and we kind of said we Capability Source went in fast and tried to kind of launch as quick as we could. And again, as I said, you know, you'll hear from the learnings there. It was hard to start with to get that. What do we actually want to build? You know, and then eventually kind of getting people to adopt it. And again, the kind of almost rolling back to that 60 days and kind of going, well, look, we're gonna have to stick with some champions. These guys get it, you know, we're gonna have to work with them to start with, and they're gonna have to almost support the rollout to everyone else. But yes, I think it was about 60 days, and it was tight. It was done, and it was pretty deep integration, because we managed to bring compliance on, so there was sign off in there, so, you know, covering the regulatory side. But again, we did say it was, you know, I don't want to use the word minimum viable product. You know, it wasn't. It was a product that we could start with and build from. And then, as Emily said, she did a great job in getting those champions to actually vote and prioritize the changes. So that is really where they started to take over, and kind of actually creating the roadmap for development was wrapped around their requirements.
Wonderful, wonderful. And one of the other questions that came in, you just touched on it, was you talked about boundary spanners and champions. How did you go about empowering them? Was it through the voting process and gathering feedback and implementing it? Maybe just a few words on that.
Oh, and Emily, I think, are you all right to cover that one?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that was down to having a really open and transparent environment to put forward any suggestions or any questions or thoughts on how the workflow tool could be used. I think it was questioning the process as to how we were using it, and then looking at ways to kind of make more advancements and kind of tweaks and changes and optimizations to the system. So I think Stuart did a brilliant job of leading it and kind of sort of handing the reins over to those champions. And because we were the ones in the tool every day, it gave us more scope to kind of fully understand the workings of it and actually where we can make those changes. So I think that was one of the main things, and got us to where we are now, which is a really good position.
I think, can I just add, I think it's really important with the guys to have the team that you say you don't have to try and stick with business as usual. Question everything, as Emily said. Question it. It doesn't have to be the same. Don't think, well, let's get the technology to literally match what we're doing now. Is if it doesn't feel right, it feels there's a bit of friction. Challenge it, change it, and that's what the guys did a lot. And they challenged me and kind of went, well, do we have to do this like this, Stuart? The tool can do it this way. And you're going, great question. Well, let's go and ask someone and kind of bowl into those rooms and open the corral doors and go, we want to change the way we did this. And sometimes we got thrown out, other times we didn't.
Wonderful, wonderful. Like I said, great presentation. We really appreciate the time, Emily, Stuart, and Glenn. And I'll just reiterate one more time, stop by the Capability Source booth. Glenn and the team will be there. I also saw in the chat some of the attendees. I posted some links to some resources there, so check that out. And thank you again, Emily, Stuart, and Glenn for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.